tuned in to Radio Gold. This production of The Avengers burst in the door of spy and superhero adventure drama on South African radio in 1971, starring Donald Monat as John Steed and Diane Appleby as the wonderful Emma Peel. It was based on the Fine TV series, which was very popular from the start in the UK, and is an excellent example of radio's adaptation of the television medium. Part pop art, part superhero, and part adventure serial, this radio show had all of the excitement and intelligence of the original television hit. National TV wasn't available in South Africa until 1976, so radio was the only way the Avengers was popularized there, rising to almost cult status. It was produced as usually 6 serial episodes per week, and the cliff-hanging segments keep the action moving and always leading up to a thrill to be continued. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Radio Gold is proud to present The Avengers.
Now, from the makers of Cold Water Omo,
a black Rolls-Royce stood outside an imposing-looking building near Whitehall in London. Inside the building was a long corridor with rows of offices on either side. Each door had the title of the area of England printed upon it: South-West Division, South-East Division, Midlands, etc. At the end of the corridor was an office marked Coordination and Control. 2 tough-looking guards stood on either side of the door. They gazed impassively ahead. Further down the corridor, there was a young woman in charlady's clothes. She was on her hands and knees, scrubbing away at the floor. She looked up and murmured,
"It won't be long now."
The Avengers. John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user. This is what Mrs. Lyons of Yellowwood Park, Durban, has to say.
It is the one powder that does everything. Well, for me, I know that.
Yes?
There's so many things that I've used and experimented with just to prove cold water Omo, really to put it to the ultimate test, and I find that it's come up to all my expectations.
Yes. Cold water Omo cleans best.
International fashion models like Jan Bishop care for their complexion with Lux Beauty Soap.
I know of no other beauty soap that could care for my complexion as well as Lux.
Lux, a beauty treatment as you bathe.
Episode 1 of this story, in which Mother, as usual, hands a case over to John Steed, who thinks it very serious, and Emma Peel thinks it's a case of love all. The office of the Missile Redeployment Ministry was luxuriously furnished. Thick curtains covered the windows. Around an oval table, several distinguished-looking men were seated. On his feet at the head of the table, Sir Rodney Kellogg, a dapper, white-haired man, was addressing the meeting. He had about him an air of quiet respectability, and he was obviously in a position of higher authority than the others. In front of him lay a book bearing the notice, "Read, digest, and pass on."
And finally, may I impress upon you that this is a matter of utmost secrecy. The Royal Commission's report must on no account be discussed outside these walls. Each of you will read it in turn and pass it on to the man whose name is next on the list. When you're all thoroughly acquainted with its contents, we will meet again to put its recommendations into effect. That's all, gentlemen. Good evening to you all.
The men left, and Sir Rodney moved over to the guards at the door.
Thank you. You needn't wait any longer. Thank you, sir. Thank you, very good.
The guards walked smartly down the corridor and through the double doors. Immediately, the charlady picked up her bucket and walked down the corridor. She walked boldly through the door and closed it behind her. The moment Sir Rodney heard the sound of the bucket, he swung round, his face suffused with delight and anticipation.
Martha, darling.
Rogers. Oh, my sweetheart.
Oh, I'm so sorry the meeting took so long.
It doesn't matter, darling, so long as you're here. Oh, you are lovely. What did you talk about at the meeting?
Routine stuff, mostly. All very dull, I'm afraid.
Tell me about it, please.
No, not now. We've more important things.
No, I want to hear about the meeting.
But my little secrets are so boring to you, my love. It wouldn't possibly interest a lovely girl like you.
Oh, but you're quite wrong, Rogers, darling. I'm interested in everything you do. Everything about you. Especially your secrets. Oh, you are going to tell me everything, aren't you, darling?
John Steed thought the morning rather cold, but quite bracing. He walked rather jauntily down the street, swinging his umbrella and raising his bowler to the odd acquaintance. At a sign reading, "Danger, Men at Work," Steed raised an eyebrow, turned off into the cordoned area, and reached Mother's headquarters.
Hello, Mother. That sign outside's a bit misleading, isn't it?
Mother, in his wheelchair, was playing table tennis with Mrs. Peel.
I had to get some form of exercise. My game, I think, Mrs. Peel. What's the problem?
That's what I'm waiting to hear.
You know what a sticky wicket is, don't you?
A difficult one.
That's what we're batting on at the moment. Why? There's a security leak at the ministry.
Which department?
Missile redeployment.
That's impossible. All the personnel have a top QR security rating.
I know. But the evidence is overwhelming. A glass of white wine, Steve, Mrs. Peel.
Oh, no, thanks, Mother.
A bit early for me.
Never too early for white wine. Red, yes. White, never. As I say, there is a leak, all right. The other side seems to know each move we make almost before we make it.
Any suspects?
Yes.
Who?
Every man in the department. Had them all under surveillance for 2 months. That's better. Hard work playing Mrs. Peel.
Have you checked all their contacts?
With a microscope. All perfectly legitimate. No leads there.
Who's in charge over there?
Sir Rodney Kellogg.
You want me to go over there?
No, let Steve go. We'll have another game. And do try to give me a little competition this time, Mrs. Peel.
Sir Rodney Kellogg was sitting at his desk. Martha, the charlady, was sitting on his lap.
So, that's the situation, my angel. The report proposed a streamlining of the divisional areas and an overhaul of the entire national security system.
Oh, I see.
Why you should bother your pretty little head with such tedious stuff is beyond me.
Oh, but Rodney, darling, I find it fascinating. There's one thing, though, that's not quite clear.
What's that, my love?
What happened to the Pearl Beach base after the reorganization?
Oh, it'll be used as a decoy. The new center of the East Anglian complex will be...
That's enough, Sir Rodney.
The curtains parted, and Metcalf, a tough-looking young man, entered suddenly.
Who the devil are you?
Metcalf, security. I thought something like this was going on. I must ask you both to accompany me to headquarters.
Oh, Rodney, darling, it's all my fault. I'm so sorry.
No, my dearest. It was I who was foolish. You mustn't blame yourself.
Oh, but I do. I got you into this mess, and it's my responsibility to get you out. Oh, Rogers, hold me. Just once more.
Martha placed herself close to Sir Rodney, looking up beseechingly into his eyes, and slipped a pearl-handled revolver from under her overalls. She pointed it at Metcalf.
Has to be done, my darling. Has to be done.
When John Steed arrived at the ministry and walked up the steps towards Sir Rodney's office, he heard 3 shots from down the corridor. He broke into a run and burst into Sir Rodney's office at speed. Sir Rodney was standing, gun in hand, staring down at Metcalfe's dead body.
Give me that gun, Sir Rodney. Seems you even shoot in triplicate. What's it all about?
I found him in here, going through my papers. There was a struggle.
And you shot him?
Yes.
Without giving him a chance to explain?
Well, I've been drinking. I wasn't thinking very clearly.
I take it you have a permit for this gun?
Oh, yes, of course.
Where did you get it?
It belonged to my father.
A small pistol with a pearl handle.
Well, maybe my mother. I can't remember.
Steed looked at Sir Rodney and without a word broke open the gun, removing the remaining bullets.
Here, loaded.
Huh?
I said loaded. Go on.
Yes, it must be jammed. Why are you looking at me like that? Are you implying that I don't know how to load my own gun?
I'm implying that you're covering up for someone. Somebody who gave you this gun and told you to confess to a murder you didn't commit.
Oh, that's absurd. Why should I want to ruin a successful career?
Sir Rodney stopped in mid-sentence. His eyes settled on the charwoman's bucket standing in the corner. A silly smile touched his lips, and his expression became, a hideous word, but nonetheless the correct one, gooey.
Something the matter, Sir Rodney?
What? Sorry. I'm not myself today. What was I saying?
Never mind. I'm putting you under house arrest pending a full investigation. You'll be confined to this office till further notice. Oh, one last question, Sir Rodney. Are you aware that there's a security leak from this department?
And what did he reply to that question, Steed?
Nothing. He looked at me as I was talking Mongolian.
And were you?
No, but I do. Quite well, actually.
Shot, Mrs. Peel.
So you don't think he knew who Metcalfe was?
I don't think he knew who anyone was. He was too busy thinking of something else.
Any idea what?
No. He seemed to spend the entire interview in a kind of trance. He kept staring into space with an idiotic smile on his face.
Could be drink, of course. Some people do overindulge.
Could be drugs.
Could be love.
Sounds as though it's being got at.
Intimidation?
Blackmail.
Infatuation?
I must ask you to curb your natural frivolity, Mrs. Peel. This case could have serious consequences. The idea of a respectable man like Sir Rodney losing his head at a woman's too ludicrous for words.
But love is ludicrous, Mother. When a man's in love with a woman, she can make him do anything. Don't you agree, Steve?
May I take that up with you later, Mrs. Peel? Meanwhile, anyone for table tennis?
Comes a new way to fight tooth decay for keeps. New fluoride for keeps toothpaste. It's the clear blue way to fight tooth decay, and it's the best anti-decay toothpaste around. New great tasting for keeps toothpaste.
The clear blue way to fight tooth decay for keeps. Great teeth out forever. Great teeth out for keeps.
New family fluoride for keeps toothpaste.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user. So many housewives, like Mrs. Adenall, say.
I wash every single thing in cold water, Omo. Anything that's washable come out spotlessly clean.
Yes, Omo cleans best.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo.
Let's take a short intermission. The Best of Dimension X from Radio Gold. Dimension X was the first sci-fi anthology series to utilize published stories from established science fiction authors, which gave the series an instant status of credibility to hardcore fans. Stay tuned. Episode 2 starts in just a few seconds.
Now, from the makers of Cold Water Omo,
there is a public call box in the street outside the Ministry of Missile Redeployment. Into the call box, a char lady, dressed in the traditional clothes, made her way slowly and without fuss. She picked up the phone and dialed a number without reference to the telephone books. In another part of London, a phone rang. A man's hand, well kept, clean, with beautifully manicured nails, stretched out. On the third finger of the hand was a very distinctive ring, a design of entwined hearts. The man picked up the phone.
Bromfield.
Dear darling. Things are getting a bit hot, I'm afraid.
What do you mean?
They're on to Sir Rodney. The security man's dead. He's confessed.
Then break contact. Throw him to the wolves.
Exactly what I've done.
Good. Better call and see me sometime. Have to work out another plan. Meanwhile, you better shed that Char Lady image, hadn't you?
The Avengers.
John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers. Wonderful new fabric conditioner that not only softens but actually rinses out hardness, rinses in a new kind of softness. Comfort leaves your wash refreshingly young and bouncy again. Just a little comfort in the final rinse gives a lot of comfort to your wash.
Softness is a thing called comfort.
Walls Ice Cream presents the new Pink Pussycat song.
We've got strawberry, vanilla, puff and hop. That's on inside. White milky chocolate the way you like. All over the outside. Where won't Pink Pussycat house?
Episode 2 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel realize that the security leak at the ministry is no game, but the score remains. Love all. Mother knew that there was a security leak at the Missile Redeployment Department. Everyone in the department had been carefully checked and screened, but so far nothing had been discovered. Things came to a head when Metcalf, a security man, had been found dead. Sir Rodney Kellogg, head of the department, had confessed to the killing, claiming that he'd found him going through private papers, and in the subsequent struggle, Sir Rodney's gun had gone off. John Steed wasn't convinced by the story. He was sure Sir Rodney was covering up for someone else. He had Sir Rodney put under house arrest, pending a full inquiry. That night, Sir Rodney paced the floor of his office. He called to the guard at the door.
Oh, guard, I wonder if it would be possible for me to see the personnel file. It's in Mr. Tate's office.
Well, Sir Rodney, I don't know. I mean...
Oh, now, look here, man. I know you're only doing a job guarding me like this, but I can't be expected to relax. I might as well do a little work, too. Now, come along.
Well, I suppose it's all right. Don't see why not. I'll get it for you.
The guard went away, and Sir Rodney continued his pacing. Leaving the door open, the guard returned.
There you are, sir.
Oh, thank you very much.
The guard closed the door and said to the other guard on duty,
You know, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. That's Shakespeare, isn't it?
Yeah, King Lear. Just before he fights Macduff and goes mad. Can't be any more mad than Sir Rodney. Bonkers, if you ask me.
Had the two guards seen Sir Rodney at that point, they would have been sure of the fact. For Sir Rodney, having searched the personnel file, had found what he was looking for.
Domestic. Here we are. Martha Roberts, 4 Chester Place. Got it. Oh, my beloved. Now I've found your address. Wild horses can't keep you from me now.
So saying, Sir Rodney flung the file down on the desk and, running the length of the room, jumped through the plate glass window. The two guards burst into the room.
Blimey! He went through the window!
20-foot drop. It's got away. Look, there he goes.
In Mother's headquarters, white wine was still the order of the day, or night.
Splendid. Beautifully chilled. So, you don't think Sir Rodney killed Methar, Steed?
I'm certain that he didn't. Look at this.
Steed produced the pearl-handled revolver.
He told me he had a firearms permit.
Yeah, you've checked.
Nothing registered in his name.
Then who is he carrying up for?
Whoever gave him the gun, presumably.
Small, pearl handle. Suggest...
A woman?
Yes, but not necessarily. Plenty of men used to carry these in the early 19th century. Not that I hope we have to go back quite that far. Mother? Yes? What? Well, you're a couple of blithering fatheads.
Don't tell me. Sir Rodney's escaped?
Right. Jumped through a window 20 feet from the ground. Now, what would make an aged civil servant do that? Madness?
Desperation?
Or love?
Mrs. Peel, I have never known you so incurably romantic or so unhelpful.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
And I can't help being thirsty. Open another bottle of wine.
Sir Rodney made a clean getaway in his Rolls. He drove straight to number 4 Chester Place, parked outside, ran nimbly up the steps, and rang the doorbell. Some little while later, the door opened. Martha stood in the doorway, but not as the grubby charlady. She looked young and beautiful. She showed no sign of recognizing Sir Rodney. In a cultivated voice, she said,
Yes?
I was looking for Martha Roberts.
Oh, you mean my aunt? She's in the bath. Can I give her a message?
Well, not really. It's personal.
What name shall I say?
Well, just tell her it's, Rodders.
Rodders?
Yes, that's right, Rodders.
She'll know who that is, will she?
Yes, indeed she will.
Right. I'm afraid I can't ask you in because we're in such a mess. Auntie never receives visitors until she's had a chance to tidy up. Just wait, will you?
Oh, of course. Forever, if necessary.
They say there's no fool like an old fool. Here's proof, all right. Inside the house, Martha made another telephone call.
Darling, Martha here. Sir Rodney's got away from the ministry. He's waiting outside. What do I do?
You must go to him. Can't have him blabbing everything. Keep him waiting for 10 minutes, then I'll be over and waiting in the street.
What do I do?
Dress yourself in your child labor's outfit. Meet him. Get him to drive you to some secluded spot, near the park perhaps.
Yes, and...
Dispose of him. Don't worry, Martha. I shall not be far away.
It has to be done.
It has to be done. But quickly. 10 minutes. Understand?
Steed and Emma Peel were doing a routine check on Sir Rodney's office. The guard was slightly more than crestfallen.
Well, how are we to believe that any one of Sir Rodney's age would undertake such an escape? I mean, would you like that jump, Mr. Steed?
Not through a closed window.
The point is, why not open it and shin down a drain pipe sooner than take the chance of injuring oneself?
It doesn't make sense.
People in love never do, as I've been trying to tell Mother.
You say he asked for this file?
Oh, that's right. A personnel file. Don't ask me why.
If you knew, it might help.
Well, I didn't see any harm in it, so I went and fetched it.
You haven't touched anything in here?
Oh, no, Mr. Steed. Not a thing. We've left everything as we found it.
The personnel file closed on the table.
As though flung down hurriedly. He found something he was looking for.
But what? Or whom?
Yeah. If only we knew what sort of personnel he was looking for. All right, guard. I'll put in a good word for you. Night.
Sir Rodney waited in Chester Street for 10 minutes. During that time, a sports car drew up across the road. The hand that steered the wheel had a distinctive ring on one finger. Bromfield had arrived. He watched as the door to number 4 opened. Martha, as a charlady, came out. In her Cockney voice, she said,
Oh, Rogers, have they let you go?
Martha, my darling, I escaped.
Escaped? Oh, you shouldn't have done that.
Oh, I know, but I just had to see you
You
again.
must go back immediately.
Well, out of the question. Every minute away from you is
I've been looking for you. You don't want to bring me into this, do you?
Ah, they'll never find us, my love. We'll disappear together, somewhere far away where we can be safe.
Martha, looking over her shoulder, saw the sports car and said,
All right, Rodney. I'll go with you. Take me wherever you like.
My darling. Oh, made me so happy. You'll never regret this, I promise you.
No, but you might.
Never, I swear it. Come on.
Sir Rodney took Martha by the hand and led her to the rolls. Seconds later, they were purring their way towards the park, followed by the sports car. At a convenient spot, Martha said,
Pull up at the end of this street, please, Rogers.
Yes, but we haven't much time, my
Please do as I say, darling. I want to ask you something.
Oh, very well, dearest. Anything you say.
Kiss me, Rodney.
Of course, my love. But don't you...
No, but I want you to make love to me. I want to be sure you do.
Oh, you know I do, my darling.
And you'll never leave me?
Never.
Martha opened her handbag and withdrew another pearl-handled revolver.
Promise?
I promise.
Oh, what a pity.
Minutes later, Martha joined Bromfield in the sports car.
I'm sorry, darling. There was no other way.
Never mind. There are plenty more fish in the sea, all ready for catching. And frying.
People coming, and you want your kitchen to look specially clean. But is everything really clean? Not only where people notice, but in those hard-to-reach cracks and crevices, like around the sink. That's the sort of dirt that's hardest to shift if you don't have Vim 99. Only Vim has deep cleaning bleach to get right down into cracks and deep-set stains, leaving everything really clean and germ-free. For total cleanness you can trust, use Vim 99, the strong one.
No dirt can stand up to the cleaning power of cold water Omo. Mrs. Whelan had to wash greasy overalls.
And I thought, oh, well, I won't worry. I'll stick it into cold water Omo, and sure enough, every bit of grease is out.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo.
Let's take a short intermission. Nero Wolfe made his larger-than-life radio show debut on July 5, 1943. This intelligent detective show, based on the Rex Stout novels, proved to be a natural for classic radio. Throughout the show's run, Santos Ortega, Louis Van Rooten, Francis X. Bushman, and Sidney Greenstreet all filled the voluminous chair of Nero Wolfe. As well, a large assortment of actors played the part of every blonde's hero, Archie Goodwin. The Adventures of Nero Wolfe show remained popular on the airwaves in different versions for 8 years, from 1943 to 1951. Stay tuned for episode 3 of The Avengers.
Now, from the makers of cold water Omo.
Pull up at the end of the street, Rodders.
Yes, but Martha, we haven't much time.
Please, do as I say. I want to ask you something now.
Oh, very well, dear. Anything to say.
Kiss me, Rodney.
Of course, my love. But don't
No,
you think...
that. I want to know if you love me.
Oh, you know I do,
Will
darling.
you never leave me?
Never, never.
It was at this point that Martha opened her bag and withdrew a pearl-handled revolver.
You promise?
I promise.
Oh, what a pity.
Sir Rodney Kellogg slid away from her, an expression of utter amazement on his face as he collapsed across the steering wheel, dead.
The Avengers.
John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers. Wonderful new fabric conditioner that not only softens but actually rinses out hardness, rinses in a new kind of softness. Comfort leaves your wash refreshingly young and bouncy again. Just a little comfort in the final rinse gives a lot of comfort to your wash.
Softness is a thing called comfort. Day in, night out, linoleum wooden, perfectly good.
Now you can choose from Vinolia's 5 new classic fragrances.
Episode 3 of this story, in which John Steed thinks Emma Peel might be right in suggesting that top men in the ministry are being persuaded to forget their jobs in order to love all. In investigating a security leak at the Missile Redeployment Department, John Steed and Emma Peel had become aware of a curious atmosphere of unreality. Sir Rodney Kellogg's behavior had been extraordinary, to say the least of it. When interviewed by Steed, he appeared to answer all questions as though in a trance. Later, he'd made a particularly daring escape from the building where he was held under close arrest. No one had been able to trace him. It wasn't until the next morning that John Steed's telephone rang.
Steed?
Mother, there's a Rolls-Royce parked at the Derby Mews. There's a dead man in it.
Sir Rodney?
I'll bet my 3 large and dry martini on it. See to it, will you, Steed?
Steed did see to it. He and Mrs. Peel were in the mews in record time.
Nasty.
Poor old Sir Rodney. This is one murder he can't accept responsibility for.
No sign of the weapon.
Not this time. Small bullet hole. Could be another pearl-handled revolver.
Could be. What suppose he was doing around here?
Eloping?
Oh, now, Mrs. Peel, don't start all that again.
Take my word for it, Steed. In a case like this, you've just... Chez La Femme.
What's that?
Perfume. Very, very exclusive. Ah, a clue at last.
Mrs. Peel picked up a wisp of handkerchief from the floor.
A lady's handkerchief, and beautifully perfumed.
Well, that's your territory, Mrs. Peel. Think you can identify it?
Of course. It's reckless abandon.
Sounds highly appropriate. Who makes it?
A company called Bell Chamber Brothers.
Well, that's your next call then, Mrs. Peel.
Bell Chamber Broth, Perfumier's Extraordinary, was so exclusive Mrs. Peel had to positively hunt out their premises. The shop was old-fashioned, but tastefully decorated. Mrs. Peel entered and made her way between the bowls of roses and lavender water, not noticing the tall blonde who was inspecting some scent in a display cabinet. An immaculately groomed, languid young man glided forward.
Madam, and what can I do for you?
I'd like to speak to Mr. Bellchamber.
That's my brother. He's away in Provence at the moment, crushing Lily.
Really? I'm surprised he doesn't object.
I was about to say crushing lilies for Lily of the Valley, madam. James always pops over at this time of year.
But if he's your brother, why isn't your name Bellchamber?
But it is, madam.
Oh, but then how did you know I didn't want to speak to you?
Nobody ever does, madam. I've got no personality, you see.
None at all.
Not one iota. My brother says that as a salesman, I'm a total disaster. When he's here, he shuts me up in the back of the shop like Cinderella.
Really? Well, you know how she ended up, don't you?
How?
She lived happily ever after.
After what? Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Thank you very much for the encouragement. And how can I be of service?
Well, you can tell me something.
Certainly.
It's reckless abandon. Is it a popular line?
With the discerning and the wealthy, it's priced a little high for most pockets.
So the number of clients who use it would be,
10, 15, 20 at the most.
Mm-hmm. Could you give me a list of their names?
Well, that's a little irregular, madam.
But you see, I'm writing an article on perfumes of the aristocracy. I take it you wouldn't be adverse to a little publicity.
Oh, as long as it's discreet, madam. Very well. Please take a seat.
Bellchamber disappeared. Mrs. Peel settled down to wait, watched by the tall blonde, who was Martha, the charlady.
Here we are, madam. As far as I can tell from our records, this is a complete list.
I'm very grateful.
Perhaps you'd care to put your gratitude into more tangible form, madam? These shelves hold our latest range.
What? Oh, yes, certainly. Here's my card. Send me a case of Lily of the Valley, distilled by your brother, of course.
Yes, madam, of course. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Peel left the shop. Martha moved forward, swiftly picked up Mrs. Peel's card and hurried out.
Just a minute, madam. You've forgotten your bottle of... Oh, reckless abandon.
Down in the street, Martha rushed through the traffic to a parked sports car, opening the door and flinging herself into it alongside the driver.
Get after that girl, the one over there.
Why? Why, for heaven's sake, Martha?
The list with my name on it.
Has she now?
Yes, but I've got her address.
And don't worry, my darling. I'll phone Freeman. He'll handle it for us. Don't worry. He never fails.
While Mrs. Peel was tracing one scent, John Steed was following up on clues at the Ministry of Missile Redeployment, interviewing Sir Rodney's second-in-command, Horatio Tate.
A woman? You say that Sir Rodney was killed by a woman?
It looks like it, Mr. Tate. Did you ever see him with one?
Never. He avoided them like the plague. I can't say I blame him, really. Extraordinary creatures, women. You never understand what makes them tick.
And Sir Rodney felt the same way?
They were anathema, Steed. Sheer anathema. Mention women's lib and he'd go purple in the face.
Perhaps he was having an unhappy love affair.
Oh, impossible. There's no room for that kind of thing in our line of country. We lead a very monastic life here, you understand. We can't allow ourselves to be distracted by members.
Excuse me, Mr. Tate, the Commission's report. If you just put a tick against your name when you've read it and pass it on to the next on the list.
Oh, yes. Put it on the desk, please.
Right, thank you.
You were saying?
I was saying that what you're suggesting is out of the question, Steed. If Sir Rodney had been carrying on, as they say, I would certainly have known about it.
I see. Well, then I'm sorry to have wasted your time.
Not at all. Glad to scotch the rumour before it spread.
De mortuis nil nisi bonum.
But, yes, quite. Exactly.
Steed left, Tate frowned.
The motivation you, Mrs. Well.
In a nearby office, Roxby, a fellow worker, picked up his phone.
Roxby.
Roxby, Tate here. Look, I just had a fellow in my office suggesting that Sir Rodney was playing about with some woman here in the office, and she killed him.
What? Well, goodness gracious, whatever next? Well, the chaps in the club will have a good laugh about that. In his office, you say? Well, miracles never cease. But pigs will fly before we see any of that sort of thing in this department.
Roxby was still chuckling as he replaced the telephone and turned to gaze affectionately at the woman next to him. It was Martha, back in her charlady gear.
Darling.
I've got to go now, darling.
Oh, so soon, my puppet.
Well, I can't hang around here all day. I've got work to do.
When shall I see you again?
You've got something to tell me.
Oh, my heart is filled with things to tell you, my treasure.
Not those sort of things. I mean important things. The things I asked you to find out for me. And you promised.
Oh, I know. I keep my promise. Oh, but how will I find you, darling?
You won't have to, Basil. I'll find you. Bye now.
With that, Martha picked up her skirts and her bucket and left. Mrs. Peel, in her apartment, having studied the list she'd obtained from Bell Chamber Broth, was consulting Mother on the telephone.
I want to eliminate some of the names on the list first, Mother. Tell me about Lady Vanessa Cholmondeley Davenport.
There's nothing to tell about her except she's dead. Had a drink last Tuesday.
Oh. Mrs. Maud Kingsley Ravenshoe?
Get her. Since she came out in 38.
The Honourable Malvina Harcourt-Smith?
Cross her out. She's a platoon commander in the Girl Guides. Remember that ghastly scandal when she pitched up a can with 3 brownies?
Oh. Well, the Duchess of... Oh, hold on, Mother. There's someone at the front door.
Mrs. Peel, still holding the list, put down the phone and went to the front door. A man stood in the doorway, a snub-nosed gun pointing straight at her.
The list. That's what I've come for. Yeah, that perfume list.
Smells of danger to me, Mrs. Peel. Out of the blue comes a new way to fight tooth decay for keeps. New fluoride for keeps toothpaste. It's the clear blue way to fight tooth decay, and it's the best anti-decay toothpaste around. New great tasting for keeps toothpaste.
The clear blue way to fight tooth decay for keeps. Great teeth are forever. Great teeth are for keeps.
New family fluoride for keeps toothpaste.
The cleaning power of cold water Omo gives you the superb cleanness you want from a washing powder. Listen to Mrs. Baxter of Claremont.
It really is good. I mean, it's unbelievable, really, that it could be so good, you know.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo.
Now get on over to the Radio Gold channel and find the exciting 3-part conclusion to this adventure. Radio Gold is a 3 9s fine radio production. See you next time.